Okay, everyone. This is going to be a reaction video. This is something I've been meaning to do for quite a while now, and well, I saw this recent interview on Dialogueworks with here we have Laith Marouf of Free Palestine TV, and he's based out of South Lebanon. He's a journalist and also a geopolitical expert, certainly on West Asia. Has extensive knowledge. He's a Syrian and a Palestinian, and he appears on this particular channel, Dialogueworks, hosted by Nima, about once a week. He's there almost every week. And Nima himself, I believe, is Iranian but based out of Brazil, and he interviews many different people, such as Scott Ritter, Andrei Martyanov, Professor Mohamed Morandi, Pepe Escobar, all the really, really good analysts. The best, in my opinion, they're the best ones out there, including Laith. Laith is I've learned a lot from Laith. Very, very insightful, very knowledgeable. But this particular interview, I really wanted to comment on because he seems to have had a change of viewpoint. Now, I'm not sure if he already held this view, and what I'm talking about here is the difference between Judaism and Zionism, right? So, we hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, they're separate things. That Judaism has nothing to do with Zionism. Zionism is secular." Well, I think people who follow me understand my opinion on this. But what's important is Laith Marouf's view and what he reveals. The revelation in this video is quite telling. So, I wanted to comment on this because he makes some. What's really fascinating about Laith is he points things out that are so blatantly obvious, but sometimes we fail to see these things. Like, it's an elephant in the room that somehow goes unnoticed, right? But Laith points it out, and it's so when you realize what he's just said, you think, oh wow, that's 100% accurate. How did we not see that? So anyway, let's get into it. I will pause the video as we go along to sort of add my input, but let's get started. So here we're about halfway through the interview. The first half is kind of not really relevant, but at this point here, 35 minutes in, so we got 25 minutes to go till the end. He comments about the current situation in occupied Palestine, and who is really putting in efforts to put an end to this occupation, and the so-called anti-Zionist Jewish talking circles and their sincerity, right? And he makes some very valid points about this. So, yes, without further ado, let's get into it.
We're talking about a country with 8-9 million people, and half of them are Palestinians, if I'm not mistaken. These sort of casualties, these sort of fights are so much devastating for the society in their eyes, if we go to their logic. Because recently 2 former prime ministers of Israel came out and said that what's happening in Gaza now is unacceptable. They cannot get along with the policy of Netanyahu and his administration, because in my opinion, they're seeing what's happening to the society in Israel. When it comes to the reason that they're somehow coming out and talking about these things, how the conflict in Gaza, in your opinion, has influenced Israelis and their society and the population in Israel?
Well, just to be clear about the numbers, there's around 14 million people that live between the river and the sea. Around 9 million are citizens of Israel, and that includes Palestinians that have citizenship. And so out of those 14 million that live between the river and the sea, 7 million are Palestinian and 7 million are colonists. Okay, so yes, it's 50-50 now between the river and the sea, but not inside the Zionist, whatever the state wants to call itself. Having said that, I think there's been a lot of surveys done over the last few months of the colonist population, and what we see is a hardening of fascist positionality because of how much protection the Zionists got from Western media, from the Western elite, from Western governments, through protection at international courts, in public opinion, in international venues, and the never-ending supply of weapons, and the arrival of thousands upon thousands of mercenaries and fascists from all across the world that want to kill Arab and Palestinian children. Okay, so that has hardened the fascist mentality of the Zionists, and we see, one of those surveys a few days ago asked if there's too much media coverage of Palestinian suffering, and around 65 or 68% of Israelis said, yeah, we should stop allowing anybody to cover the massacres that are happening to the Palestinians.
Right. So here he's just reiterating the genocidal nature of the colonizers, right? So the tiny hats, the Chosenites, I'm going to use those words to describe, you know who I'm talking about, and their attitude towards the native inhabitants of Palestine, right? The Palestinians. They really couldn't give a rat's ass about them. They for them, they're less than human. They're animals in their view. So they just want them gone, right? By hook or by crook, doesn't matter. If they won't leave, oh well, I guess we have to, force them, and if a few of them die in the process, well, so what? That's their view. Now, he was saying that around 65% of the colonizers think that there should be no media coverage. I'm pretty sure it's higher than that, but I mean that's already very indicative. I mean that's already 2/3 of the population think that the atrocities should be hidden from public view, because they obviously know it's wrong, and they don't want to. They know it's not because they care about it, because not because they care about the Palestinians, because they care about how the world sees them, right? Because they know it's damaging to their little project known as Zionism.
And I would say all of this is also true of the Jewish community around the world. And I am, not happy about saying these things. Look, for a long time, I personally, living in Canada for 25 years and working with many anti-Zionist Jews and so on, I, for a long time, have differentiated between Judaism and Zionism. Okay, but now that we have a full-out genocide and in a large scale, in a short period, broadcasted Holocaust 24 hours a day on all social medias, and it's all being conducted in the name of the Jewish state, the Jewish people, and the safety of Jewish people around the world, and where the 99.9% of every Jewish organization in the West, every Jewish school, every Jewish hospital, every Jewish media, all support the genocide. And you have this 1% of anti-Zionist Jews that are, all they're doing is talking, and taking media space, and going out and doing useless demonstrations against the state, the government that they are living in, and not taking any action to challenge the Zionists that control their institutions, or to create their own institutions. There's not one Jewish school in the West that doesn't teach Zionism. There's not one Jewish hospital in the West that condemned attacks on Palestinian medical centers and workers. There's not one Jewish magazine that condemned the Holocaust. Okay, so in fact, what we're seeing is, whether I like it or not myself, or whether the anti-Zionist Jews like it or not themselves, the fact is, Judaism is Zionism today.
There you go. Judaism is Zionism. It is. Right? I've made videos about this myself, but he just hit the nail on the head, like multiple times. Bang, bang, bang. Point after point after point. First of all, 99% of Jews support Zionism, okay? There's only this tiny minority. I'm not sure if it's 1% or 2%, or even if it's 5%, right? That's still a very small minority of Jews that claim to be against Zionism. And we'll get to that later. He's going to talk about even they have questionable motives, right? So the vast majority of the Chosenites support Zionism. So what does that say? How can we differentiate Judaism from Zionism if that's the case, right? There's no escape from this. And like he said, all these institutions, all Jewish institutions, support it.
And until there is some Jewish revolutionaries that are willing to take action to liberate their religion from Zionism, Judaism is a lost cause. Okay, I, as a Muslim, don't give a damn actually about what's the future of Judaism. It's not my religion. We can't force Christians and secular and Muslim people to differentiate between Judaism and Zionism if there's no Jew that is willing to die to make that differentiation. right?
Exactly. How many Jews out there are taking meaningful action? I don't mean holding banners saying "Free Palestine." Oh yes, it's evil, it's bad. Just talking points, saying things that we already know, right? How many of them are actually taking up arms as a resistance movement against Zionism? Not a single one. There are none whatsoever. All they do is, like you said, they take up space. And all they end up doing is just diverting attention from and arguing about, it's the real Semites, and they argue about what anti-Semitism is, and then it comes back to they just take it away from the actual subject itself, right? And they divert and deflect and mislead, and in the end, nothing happens because all they're doing is talking. So there's no meaningful action whatsoever with these so-called anti-Zionist Jews.
As a Muslim, I would have condemned Islam if there wasn't one Muslim that carried arms against the Wahhabi death squads, right? If all the Muslim religious sects all supported bin Laden, I would have abandoned Islam, okay? But the truth is, even...
Procrastination isn't a lack of self-discipline. It's
the fact that the Saudis and the Emiratis and the Qataris and the Turks support bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, their religious institutions all condemn the Wahhabi death squads. They condemn Al-Qaeda, they condemn ISIS. There is not one Muslim organization that is officially accepted by governments that supports ISIS. But today, every official Jewish organization supports Zionism and the genocide of the Palestinian people. So, at this moment...
Right, exactly. You heard what he said there, right? No Muslim official Muslim institutions support Al-Qaeda and all these so-called Muslim extremist terrorist groups. They don't. Even if the Saudi government does, even if the Qatari government does, even if the governments do. We know the governments who they actually work for, right? But the actual religious institutions, no, they don't. Whereas he said whereas the Jewish ones, oh yeah, they do support Zionism. So, you hear people say, blaming Zionism on Judaism is like blaming Al-Qaeda on Islam. No, it's not. He just dispelled that right there. Completely debunked that in just a few sentences. So, yeah, Zionism is Judaism. It's an expression of Judaism. It is part of Judaism. It dates back centuries, and in fact, you could say it dates back to Babylon in the 5th century BC.
If there is any Jew that wants to stop people from conflating Judaism from Zionism, they have to take action against the Zionist. It doesn't have to be Elias Rodriguez, a Latino Christian, that confronts the Zionist. It has to be the Aaron Mattes, the Max Blumenthals, the Dan Cohens that get off their behind, stop making money out of the Palestinian issue, and go take action to liberate Judaism from Zionism, let alone to save the Palestinian people.
Yeah, exactly. The Aaron Mattes, the Dan Cohens, all these so-called anti-Zionist Jews. Usually they're secular, which again, that doesn't actually make sense. And Laith will mention this later on in the video. Okay, so now Nema is going to jump in, and he's going to jump straight to the defense of Judaism, which is kind of disappointing because he's Iranian. Really, he should know better. Now, this interview was around 2 weeks ago. It was just a few days before the war between Israel and Iran. Now, I suspect Nema, he does like to, present himself as, kind of neutral, straight down the line. And to be fair, he's very good. I've watched his interviews for quite some time now. Now, I don't know if he's in agreement with, if he secretly agrees with Laith, but he's thinking about his channel, because remember, this is YouTube, and it's becoming more and more censored, and you can't say certain things like that, and he's probably worried about his viewers and getting, and you know what I mean. So yeah, he jumps in here, and he's kind of trying to perhaps rescue this notion that Judaism is innocent and separate to Zionism. And anyway, watch.
You're still on mute. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Laith, when we talk about Zionism, I think the situation is much deeper than Judaism, in my opinion. It goes to the roots of, I don't know if you look at the interview that Jeffrey Sachs did with Ilan Pappé, he mentions that the Israeli historian, is talking about the Zionism and the roots of Zionism. It almost started with Christian Zionism in the United States.
No, it didn't. It didn't start with Christian Zionism, Nima. You're wrong. Christian Zionism got co-opted by Judaism. See, this is a fallacy people fall for. It's a terrible mistake because it's absolutely not true. First of all, these so-called Christian Zionists are not Christian. Okay, they are Judaized Christians. They came out of the Reformation. They are mostly evangelicals that got heavily Judaized over the centuries. They could trace their roots back to the Puritans, and they are Calvinists. Okay, I'm not going to go into Calvinism and the Reformation, but these are not Christians. Okay, they are so far removed from the true faith of Christianity, they cannot be called Christians. All right, they might carry the cross and say they believe in Jesus and all this stuff, but they are definitely not Christians, and they did not start Zionism. That is a lie. That is simply not true. I think Nima probably doesn't know the history. He's probably bought into these. He just simply doesn't know, right? He found out that he read into the history of it and found the wrong information. But no, it's not Christian Zionism that started. It's not Christianity that started Zionism. That is total nonsense.
Kingdom. And look at the government right now in the United States. These people are Christian, and they're mostly Zionists. They're closer to Netanyahu than Max. You talk about Max Blumenthal. I talk with Jeffrey Sachs. No,
they're not. They're not mostly Christian. They, like I said, these are not Christians. These are they are Messianic Jews. That's what it is. Messianic Judaism is really what evangelical Zionism is. Right? They both follow the look up my video called "The Two Zionisms." I explain all this. The U.S. government is mostly staffed by dual citizens, right? So they are American, Israeli, so they are Jews, okay? They hold all the key positions. Their useful idiots are the evangelical, messianic, apocalyptic maniacs, such as Pete Hegseth, right? He's a so-called Christian Zionist, and he believes in this whole, messianic prophecy of Gog and Magog and attacking Israel, and then God's going to come out of the sky and save, all that absolute garbage nonsense. But no, the Christian Zionists, they do not control the U.S. government. Okay, they are there in cahoots and cooperating with their masters, who are the dual citizens. Okay, but to lay blame on Christianity, it's really it's just false. It's just absolutely false.
These people are amazing, extraordinary in the way they're fighting this sort of idea, this sort of mindset in Israel. But we have to consider that the Zionism is beyond a religion, in my opinion. It's some sort of racism. And we can say that...
Yes, it is a racism, you're right, because it's based on Judaism. And Judaism is if you read the Talmud, you'll see, the entire religion is a supremacist religion. It is based on racial supremacy. I would even go as far as to say is that the whole notion and concept of racism comes from this religion, and it's rubbed off on the U.S. political system. But yeah, no, he's absolutely right. It is racist, but he's still under this. I think he's got this innocent view that Judaism is just another Abrahamic faith, and all the negativity, such as the racism, that's separate, right? He just does. I think he doesn't know, unfortunately, but I think he's learning. Certainly after this interview, he probably would be perhaps doing a little bit more research.
It's just merging. It's just going toward racism, and it doesn't just. It's not about Judaism, Christians, religions. It's about a mindset that is capturing. These people are bearing with themselves. Look at the U.S. government. These are not Jewish people. These mostly Christians who
they are
mostly in favor of what?
Yes, they are, Nima. The U.S. government, they are Jewish. Okay, look at how many Jews are staffing the U.S. government. So I suspect he doesn't know. I think he's saying that innocently. I don't think Nima is deliberately.
Netanyahu is doing and supporting Rubio.
I don't think he's trying to mislead us here, but that is just flat out incorrect.
Came out and condemned the government in and the European governments, the European countries, because they're trying to put pressure on Smotrich and Ben Gvir. We have to, if we just reduce the importance of what's going on, the scale of what's going on, I think we're going to the wrong direction. You're taking that.
Look, I wrote a very long, detailed article about this specific issue. It's available on Al Mayadeen website. Just put my name, Laith Marouf, and the title, The Battle to Liberate Language from Zionism. And of course, as a Palestinian, I know the history that Sachs was talking about. And in fact, Zionism, as we see it today, has not invented anything new. It has copied exactly what Western European colonists have done for a millennia now. So everything that the Crusaders said 1,000 years.
Yeah. So here, Laith is kind of again, he's trying to lay blame on Zionism. He's trying to lay the evils of Zionism on Western imperialism, right? So this is they always go to this. They can't bring themselves to actually admit that it is Judaism, right? That is the root of all this. Even European colonialism. If you look at the driving force behind the certainly the British Empire. And the other European empires as well, but that's a subject for another video. It is this religion, right? The driving force behind all of these colonial pursuits is just that. Now the Crusades, that's something different. That, I mean, Laith does like to draw parallels between the Crusades and modern day Zionism, which you could make that argument. You could, but it's these things are, it is still separate, and that's again a different subject. But yeah, they always do this. They always want to blame Zionism on Western imperialism, which is just flat out wrong.
Years ago, the Zionists today, or the Jew-haters, I would like to call them, have said exactly the same word to word. It doesn't even go back to British Christian colonialism in the late early 1800s. Okay, or it doesn't go back only to Napoleon, who had the idea of creating a Jewish state in Palestine when he occupied Egypt and then was defeated in Akka in Palestine, and his hordes had to go back. It goes back all the way to then. And clearly, the Jewish Europeans that we know today are converts. They're not the descendants of the original Jews. That's the Palestinians. We are the descendants of the original Jews and the original Christians and so forth. And they are still white supremacists. These Zionists, Jewish Zionists, are white supremacists in a Jewish envelope around them, or
Yeah, no. See, this I completely disagree with Laith on this. I mean, again, white supremacy. This is not white supremacy. Okay, disguised in a Jewish envelope. I mean, that's very disingenuous. And unfortunately, these people cling to this idea. That it's ultimately just white supremacy. White supremacy, I'm not saying there's no such thing as that, but white supremacy is basically Jewish supremacy that's rubbed off on non-Jews in Europe, right? Not the, and I don't mean the Ashkenazi, the actual European Jews. They are Jews, right? When he's saying they're not the real Jews, well, yeah, genetically they have no lineage to the Middle East, so they are converts. But for all intents and purposes, they are Jews, because Jewishness is not DNA. It's not. There's no such thing as Jewish DNA. A lot of people disagree with me on that, but I made a video explaining that, because when you actually look at it, it's not, right. It transcends all categories, right, including race. So yeah, to say that this is white supremacy is factually incorrect, because if you look at the occupation itself and the colonizers living there, the most fanatic, the most fanatical, the most extreme colonizers are the Mizrahi Arab Jews, right? All the way from Morocco to Iraq, right? Ben Gvir, is he a white supremacist? Ben Gvir is a Kurdish Iraqi Jew. He's not European, he's not white, but he is absolutely hell-bent on, I mean, he's the one calling for outright genocide, killing everyone. And I know he's just one man, but like, if you look at most of the settlers in the West Bank, they are mostly non-European Jews. In fact, in the occupation, most of the Ashkenazi European Jews, most of them are liberal, secular, and somewhat, I say somewhat moderate. I mean, that's how moderate can you be if you're a Zionist? But they don't have this religious attachment to their worldview, okay? Because they're atheists, most of them. They just want to be there. They're like, yeah, well, some of them say, yeah, it's God gave us this land, even though they don't believe in God, which is kind of weird. But in any case, they are not as extreme. They're the more moderate ones, relatively speaking. These apocalyptic, genocidal maniacs are mostly the ones that want to just completely kill everyone and take all the land. They are the ones. They are more Jewish than the Europeans, the European Jews, right? So that's just disingenuous. And okay, I think it's around 55% of people holding of the Jewish Israelis, take away the Palestinians holding Jewish passports, but around 55% of the Jews in Palestine are Ashkenazi, right? So it's just over half. Okay, it's a majority, but they are not the overwhelming majority. And most of them are atheist and secular. So by default, if you look at the surveys of the different classes, you've got the Mizrahi, the Haredi, the ultra Orthodox, and then just the secular Jews. And when asked questions about should Gaza be ethnically cleansed, right? Around 50 or 60% of the Ashkenazi say yes, right? Which is still bad, but the other groups are up in 90, 95%, okay? So the most extreme of the colonizers are the non-European Jews, okay? So don't give me this crap about white supremacy. It's absolute garbage.
Clothing. That's all it is. But they are still European white supremacists. And, the Crusaders 1,000 years ago said that they are the descendants of the disciples of Jesus. Therefore, Palestine belongs to them. Just like these European Jews claim to be the descendants of Moses, and therefore Palestine belongs to them. They have, look at what they did in the Americas in the name of Christianity. The Pope at the time said,
yeah, he's got a good point there.
gave a fatwa.
Why does it do that? So yes, the Puritans who came from England and settled in North America in the 17th and 18th centuries, right? 100, 200 years before the Declaration of Independence. They were absolute fanatics. In fact, I would equate them to the ISIS of Christianity, right? They revolutionized. They led a revolution, a rebellion against the King of England. They executed him. They turned England into a republic for 11 years, and they were just absolute fanatics when it came to religion. But in the end, they mostly went over to North America, and there they called the native inhabitants Amalek, giving them the pretext to go and commit mass.
Well, a religious
murder.
decree to allow the Portuguese
automatically. Right. So yes, though, I mean, they are Judaized Christians, right? These Puritans from England, they are the direct result of the Reformation, which was the Judaizing of Christianity, right? And all these different groups came out. I'm not saying they were all extremists, but a lot of extremists did come out of the Reformation, and the Puritans were no exception. And they modeled their viewpoint as the Jews did. But back then, the Jews didn't have the power they have today, right? So the Jews kind of they piggybacked off these different groups, and their viewpoints and their ideologies rubbed off on them because they infiltrated through various means, such as Masonic lodges. I mean, Freemasonry. That was again, that's a discussion for another video, but that was one way they would spread their revolutionary ideas.
And the French, to genocide the indigenous people, called it an empty land, a land without a people. Terra-nullius. The Americas, for a people without a land. What the Zionists say. You see, there's nothing really new, and I understand Zionism is not Judaism in reality. But
yeah, okay. So here he backtracks. He's like, well, it's actually not. It's just today it is, but truly it's not. The origins of in reality it actually isn't. But because pretty much all Jews support Zionism today, it is for all intents and purposes. But he's still hanging on to this notion that the real Judaism is out there somewhere. It's this the true, the good Judaism that was there and was always just the precursor to just the big brother of Christians and Muslims. It's there somewhere. We just have to preserve it and acknowledge that it's a good religion and no, it's completely separate to Zionism, the true Judaism, right? Whatever wherever that might be. I mean, I don't know what he's clinging on to here, but he kind of backtracks, which is a little disappointing. But anyway.
In fact, in action, if there is no Jewish institution, show me one, that is mainstream, that can say, that is fighting the Zionists. Even our brothers and sisters in the Torah Karta, the Torah Jews that are anti-Zionist, Orthodox, religious, they are, number one, a very small minority. Number two, they are pacifist, so they will never have a armed clash with the Zionists that are abducting their religion. And the third problem with them is that they are just waiting for the Messiah to come. They believe the only reason Israel doesn't have a right to exist is the Messiah is not here yet. But when the Messiah comes, they'll be fine with ethnically cleansing the Palestinians and genocide. So that's their problem with the only religious sect within Judaism, which is still a minority, that claims that they are against the state of Israel and its genocide. Now, the rest of those people, like Sachs, like Blumenthal, like Mate, these are individuals that call themselves secular. They don't belong to any specific sect in Judaism. They don't go to the synagogue. So I don't understand how they can call themselves Jewish. And calling themselves Jewish, when they don't practice Judaism, and they can't point me to a specific sect that they can take their ideas of anti-Zionism as Jewish sources of it, how can they call themselves Jewish? If they call themselves Jewish and they're secular, it means they are reaffirming the blood quantum, racial-ish, manufactured fantasy of a race called Jews, that somehow the blood of Max Blumenthal or Aaron Mate is related to the blood of Moses. So there is real problems, with all the love.
Yeah, perfectly explained. How this confusion about whether Jewishness is a religion or a race, an ethnicity, a language group. Perfect example of the confusion there. So you have these, like I said, these anti-Zionist Jews that are saying, well, we can't do Israel yet, right? We got to wait for the Messiah, and then ethnic cleansing's fine. So again, these anti-Zionist Jews they're just delaying the genocide, right? But yeah, good point made about these secular non-religious Jews. I mean, how can they be Jews if they're not religious? In which case, they claim to be direct descendants of Moses and Abraham and these other ancient Hebrews, right? Which they're not, right? They're really not. So they're clinging on to this identity. It's an identity. That's really what it is.
To any Jew that says things that are against Zionism, but truly, we see ourselves as Palestinians by promoting those two groups, the secular Jews, and I don't know, it's a contradiction. We are, as a Palestinian, I'm then reaffirming this blood quantum fantasy. And or if I support the Natura Carta, I'm just delaying my ethnic cleansing. I'm supporting the delay of my genocide.
And I totally understand that the way that you're trying to pick.
Oh, here's Nima. He's like, oh, okay, well, I get it what you're saying, but it's still separate. The Jews are good. They some of them are genocidal, but we have to cling on to these the good ones because there's so many of them, and actually there's not. So he's just clutching at straws here, right? And again, I don't know if he's doing it for optics and his viewers, but and to save his channel, but it's becoming cringe at this point. They're willing, all these people defending them when they won't even defend their own religion themselves, not by any meaningful way, right? They don't actually take any meaningful action, like Laith was saying.
Picture the situation, but still, I do believe that the case is somehow, it's totally somehow different from what.
It's somehow different. I can't really explain it, but it must be different. We can't say that we can't say that Judaism is Zionism because that would condemn the entire religion and that's anti-Semitic.
I totally understand it because you're just so angry with the situation that is happening.
Yeah. Of course he's angry. We're all angry at this friggin' genocide that no one seems to be able to stop, and we can't even point the finger at the perpetrators. Even half of the people supporting Palestine still can't say the word, right? They still can't say it. Oh, Zionism is white supremacy. That's a safe get. It's safe to say that. You can criticize white supremacy. You can call it European or British colonialism. You're not going to get in trouble for saying that, right? Oh, these white supremacists. Yeah, because there's no white supremacy in power, right? There's no. I'm sure that white supremacy exists, but no state is actually a white supremacist state. The last state that was truly a white supremacist state was South Africa, right? Apartheid South Africa, but that ended 35 years ago. Okay, there's no state in Europe or North America that is a white supremacist state. That is just total nonsense. So to say white supremacy, and there's somehow, the mental gymnastics needed to actually go along with this notion are quite impressive, because it's to say that, well, they're expressing it through this colonial enterprise in the Levant, even though half of them are not white, and even Jews don't even call themselves white, right? They're not. White, even European Jews are not. They don't call themselves white. Okay, yeah, physically and genetically, yes, technically you could say they are, but it's irrelevant.
Happening in Gaza, what's going on there. We know how dire is the situation with the starvation, with the way that they're killing people.
Look, one last thing I would say about this: during the Holocaust, when the Nazis were mass killing all the undesirables, not only Jews, 70,000 Germans carried arms against the Nazis.
All right,
70,000 were.
Okay, so here he's going into World War II. Again, I think people who follow my channel know my view about World War II. He makes a good point here. He's using Germany and Germans that died fighting against the NSDAP, which there were. There were certainly attempts.
I call them martyrs.
To overthrow the government and kill Hitler. There were certainly several assassination attempts. It was Operation what was it? Valkyrie. That was the one. And I don't know. I'm not sure exactly which incident or which, if he's saying 70,000 during the whole war or at a certain time. I'm not really sure which part he's referencing. It's probably true. I mean, 70,000 Germans fighting against NS Germany. Yeah, possibly. But he uses the point he makes is valid though. So let's hear how he take his point on board. It's valid.
70,000 Germans were martyred fighting the Nazis. It's been 100 years now that not one anti-Zionist Jew has either carried arms to fight the Zionists or died opposing the Zionists, was killed by the Zionists. We have Christian and secular West.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that there is a perfectly well explained point about this. How many true Jews are is there a Jewish resistance movement taking up arms and actually fighting on the ground against Zionism? Has there ever been? And the answer is no. Like he said, not one. Not a single one. Right? Not one. Since the beginning, since the founding, and even the decades before before this. But certainly since 1948, not one. Not one. Plenty of them will say they're against it, and they'll protest, and they'll carry banners, and they'll say Free Palestine. But I mean, this is to co-opt the anti-Zionist movement, and it's kind of like a pressure release valve, right? And also to make sure people don't blame Judaism. You see, so they're actually doing a favor for the Zionists, because they're deflecting the blame away from the actual perpetrators, and they call it they're the ones that are saying it's white supremacy. They're the ones that are saying it's European colonialism, right? Just like the pro-Zionists will blame the problems in Europe on Muslims and Africans and non-whites. They're flooding your countries. They're terrorists and they're destroying your countries. And so those are the Zionist Jews. They will pretend to be nationalist, right? And they'll team up with, Tommy Robinson is a perfectly good example. They'll groom and prop up people like Tommy Robinson to get people to blame black and brown people for the problems in Europe, right? And then on the flip side, you get the anti-Zionist Jews, and they will blame Zionism on white supremacy, right? So it's quite clever.
Westerners, Japanese, Germans, Latinos that died, were killed, that carried arms against Zionism over the last 100 years, but not one Jew. If I was Jewish, I would be ashamed of myself. I wouldn't be able to show my face that actually Germans under Nazi rule had more honor amongst them, that they would fight to liberate themselves and liberate the people being oppressed in their name. Why does it have to be the Elias Rodriguez or the Thomas Handels or the Greta Thunbergs that are put in the front line? Where's the Max Blumenthals? Where's the Aaron Mattes on the front line getting shot? Where are they? They don't want to carry arms? Don't carry arms. Go like the Salt March of India when Gandhi sent hundreds of thousands of people with their arms up getting shot by the British until they left the British. Send me some of your anti-Zionist Jews to the front line in Gaza. Try to breach the wall. Die. I want to see one Jew die. One Jew die to save Palestine.
All right, so I'm sure there'll be some plenty of people that will clip that part there where he says die. I want to see one of them die, and they'll misappropriate that clip. But no, I mean he certainly he means well, and yeah, okay, he's still incorrect in his assertions about Zionism, but he's starting to see the truth, and I think he's beginning to move in that direction, and maybe secretly he does actually know that what Judaism actually is, and that Judaism is, Zionism is Judaism. There's no daylight between them, but he said what he said to, again, for optics and to not draw bad attention because they're already under pressure. But yeah, no, it's true. I mean, not one. I mean, he says, look, show me one. I want to see one of them die for the cause and fighting against Zionism, which has supposedly hijacked your religion, right? Which it hasn't. It is. It is the religion. I mean, look, just you know what I mean.
That one, I'll be a little bit less judgmental. But we are in the middle of a Holocaust, and for all I care, I have no interest of the history of Judaism and the future of Judaism anymore. It takes so much space in my head as a Palestinian to know every detail. I know about the history of the Bund, the leftist communists that fought the Nazi and fought the collaborationist Zionists. I know the history of every Jewish prophet, every Jewish massacre, and everything. That's all in my head. Just so I can constantly tell people, well, Judaism is not Zionism. Judaism is not Zionism. There's this amazing history of Judaism. Well, you know what? It's not my job. Show me action. Show me action. And from this day on, I personally will not be defending Judaism anymore. It is the job of the
Good. Well done. I will not be defending Judaism. That's really good. Regardless of what he said about, it's in reality Judaism isn't, but in for all intents and purposes, in practice, from what we've seen, it is. And he's saying, you know what, I'm done. I'm not defending you people anymore. You don't even defend yourselves, okay? You pretend to, but you don't actually do it. Actions speak louder than words. And all they have are all these anti-Zionist Jews, all they have are words. Meaningless words, right? To try and curry favor with everyone, to deflect and stop people from, to prevent people from noticing. That's what they're doing. They are gatekeepers. And Laith is beginning to see through it. And he's had enough. He's like, look, you know what? You people, I'm not defending you anymore. You won't do it, so why should I do it? There's a friggin' genocide going on. And you won't take any meaningful action to liberate your own religion from this Zionism, which you say is completely nothing to do with it.
Anti-Zionist Jews to take action that is louder and more concrete on the ground than the actions of the Zionists.
Yeah, again, I totally get your point.
Yeah, I totally get your point. But, the anti-Zionist, same, he just... anyway.
Laith. And I do believe that, as Julian Assange pointed out, that media is playing a very important role, a very important role in any sort of war that happens in any corner of this planet that we're living in. But the media and these people that you're talking about, they're trying to do their best to inform people. And that's important, in my opinion, because without having a media, because the propaganda machine, let's be honest, we are the minority, we are the little minority of the society, this media that we're using. But we can do little changes with the media. We can start with these little changes. And these people that are doing this, you mentioned Blumenthal, you mentioned Mate, I talked with Jeffrey Sachs, and these people are making huge changes in the mind of even the Jewish community, even the Christian community, within the Muslim community. We know that how much, look at the situation in the Middle East. Look at the Muslims in the Middle East. Do they really care about what's going on? Do you think that the leaders in Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, we have the same, you criticize the Jewish community, you can criticize them, but we have the same sort of problem within the Muslim community. Look at what has happened with Syria. Do you remember those days they were removing the Syrian leader, Bashar al-Assad? They were, many people, Arab Muslims in the West, they were just so happy that they're removing Assad. What has happened to it in the aftermath of what has happened in Syria? Look at Libya, the same. These are the same people. It's not just about focusing on a religion. I think it's much larger than that. How they can manipulate these people who are Jewish, Muslims, Christians.
Yeah, so here we have Nema trying to, again, deflect away from it. He says that, well, there's a power above all this that's manipulating things. So we can't just pinpoint on one particular religion. Oh, Judaism is just another religion. No, he's this. I think he's. I hate to say it, but I think he's being disingenuous here. I think he knows better. But again, he's trying to protect his channel, and it's kind of infuriating to watch because it's simply not true. He's trying to draw parallels between Syria and Libya, well, obviously Libya, but Syria and occupied Palestine, right? But he's still not listening to what Laith has said. How many Jews are taking up arms against Zionism? That's Laith's point. Not one. Hundreds of thousands of Muslims take up arms against these Takfiri death squads known as Al-Qaeda, HTS, ISIS, whatever they call themselves, right? The biggest victims of these death squads, of these terrorist organizations, are Muslims, right? How many Jews are victims of have been killed by Zionism, right? Okay, yes, I know in the October 7th, quite a few were got murked by their own by the IDF, but I mean that was an unusual situation. For the most part, they have their Hannibal protocol, right? We know that, but they don't. That's not comparable. You can't say that's the same. You don't have Jewish death squads going around killing Israeli Jews because they're not Jewish enough, right? It just doesn't. It's not. You cannot compare that. That's absolutely incorrect.
And we have to consider that. I totally understand your point. I'm totally with you on that point. We have to be more active in the way that we're fighting. And go ahead before wrapping up your thing. Yes.
And look, you are definitely right. Look, the West has manufactured a new Jew. It took 100 years. It took a Holocaust. It took all those wars, and they molded a new Jew. Okay. And the West has been attempting to mold a new Muslim, a new Arab, for 100 years also. But the only difference is, till today, there are Syrians carrying arms against the Wahhabi death squads. There are Bahrainis, there's Saudis, I don't call them Saudis, Arabians from the east part of what is the Saudi kingdom now, that are carrying arms against the Saudi state. There is honorable Sunnis, Shias, Druze, Alawis that are fighting and have given the most valuable things to them, their children, their sons, their husbands, their fathers, and the most honorable person on this earth, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, sacrificed, not only to save the oppressed of Palestine, but for the honor of Islam. The honor of Islam, we're still fighting for it. There is no Jewish equivalent currently that is fighting for the honor of Judaism. You see? And I hope, that some of those Jewish allies that are listening to us now would decide to start a militia, go down to Palestine, go down to Lebanon, fight. I mean, there is...
Don't hold your breath. Somehow I don't see that happening.
Jewish people that carried arms, by the way, in Syria, on the side of the fantasy of Rojava. Remember that? the anarchists that came to northeast Syria to aid the Kurds against ISIS, many of them being Jewish leftists. Where are these Jewish leftists to carry arms against Zionists? This is what burns in my heart here. So I'm hoping that all of this anger will instigate Jewish people to take action.
And we not just Jewish people, Muslim people, Christian people. I think we need a broader picture to deal with what's going on with Zionism. Thank you so much, Laith, for being with us.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath. That's just not going to happen. I wouldn't bet on that. Yeah, so that's the interview. That's the second half of it, and yeah, it was interesting to see that, because so many of these, it's really quite astonishing how people from the region, you know, the people who are actually at the receiving end of the violence inflicted on them by Zionism, right, in the name of a Jewish state, which is what it is, and they still cannot, or they still refuse to point the finger at the perpetrator, right? And Laith is doing so, kind of, right? He's like, okay, well, now it is, but in the past it wasn't. You know, it was still Western colonialism that invented this. And he's talking about the new Arab and the new Jew. In the last 100 years, yes, they've been tried to mold a new Arab. That's true, and that is what we see in the Gulf states, right? Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Doha, Kuwait, Saudi, these places, these Tinseltown fake countries, right? And if you're from there, no disrespect, but you have to understand these countries are just oil companies with a state attached to them, and that's all they are. And these they're just plastic. They're just castles made of sand, right? The real Arabia is Yemen. That's, if you want to see the real Arabia, go look at Pepe Escobar and his recent travels there. But when he mentioned the new, they've also been trying to mold the new Jew. Well, no, actually they haven't. The only difference is, in the last 100 years, the tiny hats have acquired more power than they've ever had, right? They really have managed to consolidate power. They have so much power that they have not been reinvented. They've been revealed. Okay, they've revealed themselves. The mask is off. They're able to be who they truly are, and that's what these people are. And the epicenter of this is the so-called state of Israel and the occupation of Palestine and the absolute horror show that we've been witnessing there. That's what these people are. And Gaza is a microcosm of what they would do to all of us and what they want to do to everyone on earth. And I'm not being hyperbolic. That is what they want. They want to kill off most of humanity and then enslave whatever's left. I mean, that's not me saying that. They actually literally say that. There are videos of them saying this. So, all right. Anyway, guys, that's the video. Hope you enjoy it. Leave the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time.